Have you ever wondered what it would be like to feel steady and confident in your parenting? Do you ever think about how to truly savor these precious years with your growing people? And perhaps most importantly, do you dream of creating connected relationships that endure beyond childhood? I'm Carrie Conti, and I've spent the last 2 decades guiding, supporting, and inspiring parents to know and trust themselves deeply. And as a result, there are thousands of parents all over the world who feel skillfully equipped, personally fulfilled, and authentically connected with their people in all phases of development. Join me, along with my friend and collaborator, Kristen and I, as we explore what it means to not parent. Let's get untangling.
So, Carrie, one of the things that I've realized in this world of parenting with technology is that I have become the technology police. I'll just say it. And I didn't ask for that job. But at some point I realized, okay, someone's got to pick up the badge. Someone's got to be policing their use. And so my question for you is, is there another way? First of all, is it necessary? Is it necessary that someone's the technology police, and maybe, Mark and I do that together? And then my second, follow-up question to that is does it have to be that way? Is there a technology Buddha or something that I could be and not the technology police? Because I don't like this job of being the techno police.
Yeah, I get it. I don't think that's how people want to be in relationship with their people. That's not the yumminess. That's the I'm telling you to do something. And we don't want to be told to do stuff. So we know it doesn't always feel good. And so in regard to your question, when I think of police, it's rigid and it's top down. And the way that I want to invite you and others to consider is, and I hope this translates, but you're their humanhood Sherpa right now, that you're shepherding them into, you're helping them. You've got some experience in life, and you have an idea of what kind of values that you want to be operating with, and what are some of the ways that you hope they think about themselves and others and the relationships they have with other humans and the planet. And the technology is a piece of that. And that when you consider, okay, my role is to help these humans understand how to be them and know themselves really honestly and deeply before they move on from being in our home and being out in the world as adult humans. And technology is a piece of that I'm going to really have to mentor them. And I love that idea of shifting from being the technology manager to a mentor. And that's where being a lot more transparent with your own challenges and with your own experiments and with your own awarenesses can be really valuable, that you're saying, this is an element of life that I feel is part of my job to help you understand in a healthy way. And so sometimes that's going to be really fun and we're going to have a great time with it. Sometimes it's just going to be crummy and I'm going to have to say things and do things that feel not great to either of us. And here's why I'm doing that. Here's what I'm going for with you. I really feel like I hear often that when parents do stand steady because they really value something around the technology and they say, no, we're going to hold a boundary of putting our phones in the kitchen at night so we don't use them in the bedroom, or when there's going to be a time of the day that you guys do of no screens between 5:30 and 7:30. And, interestingly, my parents, and I've said this in other interviews, but my parents didn't have a lot of guidelines or boundaries. I was the third, and it was pretty free for, not in a bad way, but they just trusted me and we were doing our lives. And I didn't have there weren't a lot of limits, but the one limit they had growing up was on school nights, there was no television between dinner and 8:00. And that might sound silly, but that wasn't the case in all people's families. And during that time, we would do our homework or we would sit in the living room and, chat or listen to music or something. And it wasn't all highbrow in any way, but it was a limit that at the time I was a little bit like, but so-and-so gets to do whatever they want. And it was like, my parents just said it and held it. And I look back and I'm like, that was fantastic. Like, I'm so glad that they took that responsibility and said, this is what we're doing. And when I do hear from parents a lot of times that say, we went on a vacation and we all chose, we said no phones or we didn't have cell service. And it wasn't easy necessarily, but there was a sense of relief that I felt, and that my kids even said that it felt good not to, like, when you're that accessible and that on, having another human who pulls the plug for you when you aren't at a point in your life where maybe you can do that, that is a gift. Like, that can be so useful, because here's my thing. Know your tendency and try something different. Mm-hmm. And what I know about the phones right now and the devices is that the tendency is to keep consuming, to stay on them, to check it one more time, to do the rounds of Instagram and email and all the things that we like to look and see what's going on out there. And having somebody else say, you know what, sweetheart, we're going to try this, because we know what that is. We know what happens when we do that. We have all the data on that. We've been doing this for X amount of years. We know what it is to just look at our phones. Let's do some experiments where we change that up. Let's see what happens. Like, part of my role in your life is to give you experiences so that you have more data to operate your life with. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I wonder if you would speak to directly, how would we shift our way of being? Like, what's happening on the inside when we go from badgering and nagging and like lording over and, all the things that when we're doing it, we don't even want to be doing that. Like, I don't want to jump into my kid's room and gotcha on your phone again. I found you. Or I don't want to be scrolling through their phone. Like, there's a way of being when I am sort of in technology police mode. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be like that. So can you speak a little bit to like just shifting like our approach? Like, what's the view that we're coming from, or the context that we're coming from, that would have us be so angry and annoyed and like, overseeing and manager? How do we shift that?
Yeah, I think that's the question, and I love it. And I see that, the backing up to last episode and talking about the pausing and the really asking ourselves, like, what am I really going for? Like, what if I am starting to notice that I'm getting swirled up and I want to go call them out on, like, I told you not to, like that whole game of like, I'm the boss and you should listen and all that. What if we went in and we looked at ourselves first and we like soothed that part first and really like applied some of these tools of perspective and really, took a bit of a longer game on it. And the way that I like to do that, it's almost like I think of it as a little dial where there's fear and judgment on one side. Then you turn the dial and there's acceptance of like, all right, it is what it is. So fear and judgment is like, what if this goes bad? And what if I'm not a good parent? Like, we know all the ways that that's getting tumbled up when we get triggered around this stuff. It's the, what if I mess this up? What if I'm not doing right by them? What if we're not going to be connected? It gets loud in there when you're operating from fear, really, really loud. And there's a lot of places that fear wants to take us. And it doesn't serve us or the relationship. So noticing and having that compassion and going, oh, look at me all swirly about this. Oh, wow, I am feeling a sense of fear. Okay. Whoo, let's take a breath. Let's slow this down. Okay. Perspective. Okay. Then we turn the dial just to acceptance, not even appreciating yet, but just to going, all right, here's where we are. Okay. It is what it is. This is what we're doing right now. Okay. It doesn't mean we won't change it. The minute we accept it, something can lighten, something can loosen, where it's like we just take out that judgment of ourselves or them and we go, oh, wow, look at us. Isn't this something to be alive in this year, in this moment, with all these things that are tangling us up and putting us at odds and making us question everything? It's like, okay. There we are. Interesting. Exciting. I have this futurist that I love, this woman futurist from Norway. And she says that when new things come at us, as her futurist kind of manifesto, it's approaching it with interesting, exciting, because that's a lighter way to appreciate. That's a lighter way to be with it. So there's judging, then there's accepting, then there actually is appreciating. Like, wow, look at them being so steadfast in their desire to do that thing that I don't want them to do. Wow, look at how incredibly wise they are. Yeah. Oh, wow, look at how much. Yeah. Oh, wow, look at them stepping away from it. Creative, resourceful, like innovative. Yes. Like, I absolutely defer to my younger friend people when I have a question about my technology that I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's so classic, but it's like, wow, you actually are on a leading edge that I don't have access to. And so when you're not in the tangles, having more of that awareness of like, wow, look at how many amazing choices they're making. Look, like what you and I know, because we've talked about it so much, is, and why we started this podcast in the first place, was because when we get tripped, when we get triggered, the light gets so bright on that thing that it really makes it hard to see what's around it and what's beyond it and what lives beyond this phase of development. And I feel like technology is one of those places that can draw us so pinpoint into bad, 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 not okay, not okay. And what I want to remind people is it's just a tool. There isn't any right or wrong. You're just trying to figure out how to navigate it and guide your people with it. And there's so much else happening around it that if you can give that just a little bit more of your energy and attention, or, like on a regular basis, there's, again, I'm back to that idea of like, then you're going to influence them differently. But if you're only in the fear and you're only coming from that place of like, don't do this, stop that, keep going on that, blah, 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 Charlie Brown parent, wah, 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 wah. You don't access the place where real influence lies, which is in that clarity and in that confidence and in that steadiness. And you might not access that in the realm of technology, but if you can access that in other places, the technology might loosen, that knot might come undone a little differently than if you just go in trying to figure out how to untangle that.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about what you're saying is that when we shift that internal experience away from fear and judgment, which flips into anger very quickly, like the sense of like, why am I always on top of you about your technology, right? Real quick, it's so triggering, so hot. I don't like that place. But when I start to move over to, as you said, appreciating that in the realm of technology, my kids demonstrate an enormous amount of ingenuity and resourcefulness around trying to break the rules, right?
Right.
And if I'm not careful, that could be really triggering. But when I move over to that sort of like appreciation and curiosity, now I start to use something that I also learned from you is like outfoxing. Yeah. So now I'm like, wow, they are really good at figuring out. Like the latest thing that they did is they realized that they have iPhone limits. I use the screen time app to limit how much they can do on each thing. They'll trade each other devices in order to get, like, this one wants more TikTok. So she'll use this one's phone, but she'll borrow that one's iPad for the streaming because they're limited on that. When I figured it out, because I was like, why is she on Elizabeth's iPad? And I was like, oh, those little monkeys, they have
so clever.
Outfoxed me. And
totally outfoxed
so
you.
I figured out how to outfox them right back. They don't know this, but we have an app on the phone now through our cable company that allows me to turn off the internet to specific devices at specific times. And I was like, I found this and it was like, ha ha ha, like, I've got you now.
Right.
And they still don't understand how it is that that's happened. And I'm like, well, okay, they'll figure it out eventually.
Sure.
One of their friends will be like, have you checked to see if they have the Shaw app on their phone? In which case they'll be like, dang it. But right? I love, love, love that it's turned into this almost fun cat and mouse game instead
Totally,
of
that
this
was
like,
the visual.
God, here we are again. Why can't you follow the rules? I've just leaned into like, they just have a really hard time being addicted to technology. And I'm here to help them navigate that because developmentally, they're not actually capable of holding themselves accountable to their internal rules the way that I can. And I still struggle with it. But also just this sense of like, you know what? I don't have to be mad and freaked out about us all the time. I can just be like, I see you. I see you over there finding a new way, a new workaround my rules. And I'm just gonna lean into it. I'm just gonna say, okay, this is my job.
Yeah, this is part of the deal. This is modern parenting, as I keep saying. And I know there's always been stuff, and this one feels a little different because of what it allows access to. You know, it's like when you were watching TV back in the 80s, there wasn't even cable. It's like, oh, we're going to watch HBO and see the, R-rated movie. That was as, that, or babysitting, and you'd put on Cinemax. Like, there was always something that you're like, ooh, this is the thing that I'm not supposed to be doing. Now that thing is the universe. Like it's the world, and it's so much. And I feel confident that it's worth stepping into the role that you're stepping into, where you're like, okay, great. I'm going to help them. I'm going to get clear in me, and I'm going to walk slowly, and we're going to have conversations, and I'm going to, be alongside them as they learn about this. And there's going to be times where they outfox me, and then there's going to be times where I outfox them. And if we could do this all in the bigger container of like, you are you, and you're going to have to figure you out, and I'm walking with you as your parent person. So I'm going to be figuring me out in relation to you so that we can have healthy relationships now, and that we trust and want to know each other later. Like, so if you bring that sort of lens to it, then the question around what's my role around technology, it becomes just another piece of the investment that you're making in these relationships and the job of helping these humans navigate the world, and not this thing that has so much sizzle and heat and energy to it that they sense when you're thrown off by it. And there's something a little bit exciting about that to young people. One last thought, and then, but it's like, I love the awareness that you come in with very different intentions to this relationship. So you said, okay, I'm having a child. My role is to keep them safe and, help them feel connected and loved, and us to have this family. They don't arrive with that intention. They arrive with the intention to be who they are and to be as free as they can possibly be, while getting their basic needs met from the people that are facilitating that, which are the parenting people. So being aware and just acknowledging that that's what's really going on. It's not about the technology. It's about this idea that you've got one party that's saying, let's keep you safe. Let's make sure you don't get exposed to things before it's time. Let's make sure that I'm doing a good job helping you navigate life, with another group of humans who are equally as human going, we're good. We're going to do all this. We've got all these shiny objects that we're amidst that we want to explore. We want to figure ourselves out with as little interference as possible. Like, that's crazy in itself. Like, that's an unbelievable endeavor to be on. So holding that and going, right, it's kind of their internal reason for being to try to push these boundaries. And I'm going to choose to walk with them by helping them learn this. And what that often means is that I am going to have to make some choices and set some guidelines. And then when they break that, I get to choose how I respond to that.
I just love just the way that you work so much, because it starts with ourselves, starts with self-awareness, which we went into in the last episode. And in this episode, we could have gone into so many tactical things. And I know you really do in your courses and in your mentoring work, But just that perspective shift of going from like technology police to technology Sherpa is just so mind blowing to me, because there's so much more that's possible when I make that shift. Yeah. It's like finding a whole other 10 pages to a menu, right? That I didn't know was there. Like, oh, wow, from that perspective, I could do this or I could try that. But it's just such a game changer. And I love it. So I know we got to wrap this episode up, but I didn't want to end without saying that, because that's just going to make such a difference for me, like immediately, like today, having that perspective shift. So thank you.
You're welcome. And that's my last note for this episode, is really that we get to play with perspective. Like that's one of the things I want people to leave this particular episode with, is just play around with perspective, because so much of the time we get locked in. And what I think the young humans do better than anybody on the planet is challenge that and invite us to play around with perspective. So by noticing when we're judging and then just shifting the lens and going, wait, is there a way I could accept this? Ooh, is there a way I could even accept and appreciate and celebrate this? Like, you've just blasted open into a whole new universe. And when you operate and interact with your people from a place that feels like that in you, that changes the interaction that you have with them.
Totally. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, we've got one more episode. So let's say goodbye for today and let's get there.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Not Parenting. For any resources or offerings we spoke about in the episode, remember you can head to carrieconti.com, or you can click on the links in the episode show notes. Thanks for being here.